Hi, my name is Mica Daurie. My pronouns are she, her. You might be wondering why I introduced myself with my pronouns. It's because I'm trans. Now, when I said I'm trans, I'm sure that made you think something. And I wonder what the first thing you thought about was. Was it a wonder? Was it a question, an assumption, an idea about who I am or what I represent? Today, I hope to change that and help everyone listening see beyond these labels and assumptions and help learn more about our lives here in Nova Scotia and beyond. A good place to start might be by telling you a bit about myself and my work, past and present, to frame my expertise and help you get to know me a little better. So I'm the founder of TRANS, Trans Rights Advocacy Nova Scotia, as well as the vice president of Health, Housing, and Social Development for the National Council of Women Canada. But before I got to where I am today, I was a long-time professional and public servant with a proud history of being the first openly trans woman to work in a number of stations, despite my young age. Now, for those who don't know, Nova Scotia has the highest number of transgender and non-binary people across the country, according to Statistics Canada. 1 in every 200 people in Nova Scotia identifies as trans or non-binary, and that number drastically increases to 1 in every 100 for people aged 15 to 34. Despite being a huge part of the cultural fabric here in Nova Scotia, we are largely absent from meaningful parts of public life, like leadership in the public and private employment sectors, elected office, and volunteer public service. I am a life-lived trans person here in Nova Scotia who speaks and teaches from a place of first voice experience and the first-hand experiences of those who I advocate for. As a trailblazer, I've often had to do so much more than just show up. I've had to work twice as hard to get a foot in the door, 3 times as hard to be noticed, and 4 times as hard to simply be offered a seat at the table. In addition to showing up as a colleague, I often wore many extra hats as a professional. I was an unpaid educator, an advocate, a smiling example of diversity to show off when needed. But in wearing so many hats, there was always a weight. It made it very hard to focus on the work and showcase my skills and competencies when everyone was so fixated on who I was as a person and not how I showed up as a professional. I spent a lot of my time gentle parenting my colleagues, bosses, and those around me, showing them how to show respect and kindness to people like me, as well as myself. Despite working hard to create a safe, caring environment in every space I entered, there always seemed to be a catch. No matter how hard I tried, I always seemed to fall short of being enough to be rewarded for my work, let alone offered any meaningful opportunity to advance or be considered a leader. And I knew I wasn't alone in feeling this way. The harder I looked, the more the system seemed it simply wasn't built for people like me. And my experience wasn't unique. It was an experience that trans and non-binary folks across the country share in the unique challenges we face in everyday life. For most of us, it starts very young. And for me, I felt like I was a princess from the time I was 5 years old. I knew there was something different about me from as early as I could remember. Some of my earliest memories of realizing who I was were watching my older brother play video games, playing Barbies behind closed doors with my little cousin. In each of these, I found beacons of femininity and strength, and I saw characters that looked like I wanted to look one day in my future. Everything I loved and adored, I was told I shouldn't. Instead, I was fed an idea of what I should enjoy. No matter how hard I tried to like the things I was told to, or how many times I got in trouble for liking the things I actually did, it wouldn't stop me. And by the time I hit my teens, that femininity was spilling out of me until I couldn't hide it anymore. It started with my clothes, and then my hair, and then the makeup. And finally, by 13, I started to feel somewhat like the person I had dreamed of as a kid. But that's when I noticed things around me changing. Despite looking more like I wanted to, I still lacked the words to truly describe how I felt different. And the more I asked, the less it felt like people knew or could relate. Or if they did know, it was kept a hushed, quiet secret. It started in small, subtle ways, some too small to notice at first, but looking back, it makes a lot of sense now. Where before there were subtle comments from family, questions about how I'd turn out, or comments about how feminine I was, there now seemed to be an undertone of mocking, a thinning patience for my presence. I wasn't told to leave, at least not for those reasons, but soon it became rather clear that I was unwelcome. And it wasn't just at home. It was at school, on buses, at the mall, almost everywhere I went. I felt like I stuck out. Now, I made friends, found people like me along the way, found pockets of safety and comfort, but with my life finally starting to feel happy and comfortable, an idea of who I wanted to be starting to take shape, it wouldn't be long before that was all I had left to hold on to. Soon enough, with some doors closed and others feeling too scary to walk back into, I was left with nowhere to go. And if it wasn't for some amazing chosen family that gave me a roof over my head and stability until I was able to take care of myself, I'm not sure I would be here telling this story today. The older I got, the less I cared what people thought of me, and the less I cared, the more people seemed to like me. By high school, I found a version of myself that I was happy with and found some legs of stability with my family and school life. And as that confidence in myself grew, it changed the way people saw me. I would never have it easy, and some people would never accept me. But soon enough, my determination would take me far. Living through parts of high school with chosen family, working late nights during those high school years, doing what I needed to survive and get by. I made it through. I found myself at the start of college, the start of a new journey, and finally, with the words to describe myself. I am trans. And being trans meant that all the things that didn't have a name before finally did. I finally found the secret that was being kept from me, and with it, the answer to why things felt like such a challenge. I finally had an answer for all the love it felt like my family and friends lost for me. I finally understood the odd glances and condescending tones. And as I understood it more, I learned how to navigate it more. Being charming, having a sense of humor, being good at what I was doing, all seemed to help people see me as a person, and not this one-word descriptor. I was someone, a human being, not just trans. As I aged and I learned more about how the world would perceive and treat me, I learned that there were some things that would never feel safe. There were certain places I would have to avoid, rural communities where I wouldn't even feel welcome walking into the local gas station, and certain services like healthcare that would just never feel comfortable for someone like me. Now, luckily, as I've matured, so has the world, and some of these concerns have gotten better, but there's still many things that are much the same today as they once were and historically always have been. What we now celebrate as Pride in Canada began back in 1971 as a protest movement, pushing back against the limits of the 1969 Omnibus Bill, which didn't go far enough in protecting LGBTQ rights. By the early 1980s, these protests had grown into powerful annual marches in cities nationwide. But before any real progress was made, the rainbow community endured decades of harsh treatment. Being surveilled by local police and RCMP, losing jobs and being ousted from political positions, being discharged from the military simply for existing as their true selves. Moreover, many of those that were persecuted in the LGBTQ purge ended up with criminal records, and as a result lost their homes, their job prospects, and often lost their family and peer support networks with it. There were also hundreds of thousands of lives lost during the early AIDS crisis of the 1970s and 80s that are not here to tell their stories today due to systemic failure and a lack of care. Despite Pride taking root across the country decades earlier, Nova Scotia's first Pride Parade wouldn't take place until 1988, with as many as 75 participants marching who donned paper bags over their heads in fear of losing their jobs, their homes, or worse, the support of their friends and family. While things in city centers like Halifax have gotten better over the years and made progress, Rural communities here in Nova Scotia and across the country still feel decades behind the curve. All of this in culmination paints a very clear picture of the state of inclusion for two-spirit, trans, and non-binary Nova Scotians. Even today, with all of the amazing progress that has been made, we still must plan our cross-province road trips wisely because some places just don't feel friendly. We are often the black sheeps of our family, and whether quietly forgotten or loudly disinvited, many of us are forced to create our own loving families. We still face mountains of bias, both conscious and unconscious, while trying to gain and maintain employment. We are often the most qualified candidate, yet are almost always passed over in pursuit of advancement or leadership. We are more often than not living on the fringes and viewed as being unsuited for the very places where our voices are needed the most. One of the biggest reasons that people are able to demonize trans folks is that we currently lack any meaningful seats at the tables that are most important to our health and well-being, like medicine, law, and politics. Getting trans folks involved in all aspects of society, politics, volunteer public service, leadership in the public and private sectors is the key to our province and country growing with the growing population of trans and gender diverse Canadians. As it has become less dangerous and marginally easier to survive as a trans person in North America, we've saw a rise in the number of those who identify as such, and we'll continue to see those numbers rise year over year. Solidarity can be defined in many ways, but solidarity to me means this. I may never fully understand your struggle or what led you to where you are in life today, but solidarity means that I recognize that struggle, and you will not bear that alone. Are you connecting with your trans friends and family, offering them support to your neighbors, community members, organizations run by or directly supporting trans folks in your area? Are you being intentional in connecting with gender diverse suppliers and giving money back to community when given the opportunity? Solidarity means showing up in multiple ways for your community, and even if they're not part of your community, and even if it isn't easy. Trans futures are bright, but only when a well-informed public sees us as people and not a political ideologue or ideology. Trans people have existed since the dawn of time and will continue to, despite centuries of persecution and this new wave of anti-trans hate, which seeks to erase us. It will not erase us. Trans people are deserving of safety and respect. We are your neighbors, colleagues, teachers, friends, family, and children. And our continued resilience can only come from people like us being able to lift our heads from a place of simply trying to survive to one where we can be uplifted and have the opportunity to meaningfully thrive. I want people to walk away feeling inspired and ready for the path ahead, feel called in and called to action rather than called out. Because our seat at the table depends on people just like you listening to this talk today to see us as people and stand with us in solidarity, even if you may not understand every piece of our identity or journey. To each of you listening today, thank you for being an important part of this conversation.